All right. Hello, everybody. My name is Emilio Romo, and this is my Econ 101 oral presentation. The question I'll be introducing today is how much did COVID 19 impact the U.S. trade deficit? Um, why is it important to find a good answer to this question? Well, when the pandemic reached the US, our economy was not prepared for this, and understanding the economic implications of COVID 19 will be critical when it comes to planning and preparing for future pandemics. Why is this an economics question? This is an economic question because a pandemic affects the ability to transport goods and where we can transport goods from, um, also known as the global supply chain. This ultimately affects the trade deficit. U.S. trade deficit lowers the income of domestic workers as well as reduces national savings. On this slide, I will be answering what is the U.S. trade deficit and how much did COVID 19 impact the U.S. trade deficit. Well, the U.S. trade deficit is the gap between goods imported and goods exported through the United States. Ideally, we would like the net export of goods to be higher than the net import because this would bring more money into our economy, whereas a higher net import of goods would increase our expenditure. Within the first 6 months of 2020, exports of U.S. goods dropped by more than 25%, while U.S. imports dropped by roughly 17%, causing the trade deficit to increase by about 20%. As we can see on the chart over here, between January and June, there was a huge drop in the net number of exports from the U.S. By August of 2020, the U.S. trade deficit was $67 billion, the highest it has been since August of 2006. When particularly focusing on the trade deficit of manufactured goods, the trade deficit in August was $87 billion, the highest on record since 1992. Of course, there are limitations to everyone's research. What are the limitations to the ability to answer this question? Well, we haven't seen this pandemic fully play out and may not have a broad picture of the effects until many years from now. So I'm only able to use data collected recently and predict how COVID 19 will continue to affect the trade deficit. What assumptions would need to change for your answer to be incorrect? Well, I made the assumption that COVID 19 was the underlying factor in the change of the trade deficit. And the assumption of COVID being the underlying factor for the trade in the change in trade deficit would need to change in order for this answer to be incorrect. How confident are you that your assumptions are correct? Well, based off the research that I've gathered, I'm fairly confident that the trade deficit has dropped by around 20%, although the current state of trade deficit may differ from previously collected data because the trade deficit is consistently changing over time. And here are my sources, and that will conclude my oral presentation. Thank you guys for listening, and see you in class.